So I'm back with Brian Saleo for our Problems We Solve series. Again, it's our opportunity to do some short discussion, video, audio around the questions that are on the minds of our prospects and our customers. There seems to be this ongoing thing, and I'm going to hand it to you here, obviously, this ongoing thing where there's more work from home stuff and hybrid work. And we're hearing a lot of stuff like, well, how do you organize goals and objectives and how I know anybody's doing anything? So we had some ideas around that, and we're doing a whole role reversal today. I'm going to be the solutions guy, and Brian, you're the podcaster. So let's do the virtual handoff of the mic. There you go. You've got it. There you go. And you're on.
All right. So as a company, something that, you have really instilled in all of us for probably going on 2 years now has been the importance of really setting strong goals in the form of OKRs. So I'm sure that came from a book somewhere along the line. And then in typical Chris Burkhardt fashion, you take the idea from a book and you make it a little bit better. So talk about that. Where did you first hear about OKRs, and I guess maybe we should start with what the heck are they?
Yeah, so I'll do the what the heck are they first.
Yes.
OKR stands for objective and key result, and it's kind of smushed together. It's a goal setting framework. It's how organizations can organize themselves to get projects done. But how Placers got here, some of our audience knows this, but one of the things I pursued was I wanted to coach other leaders of other companies so that I could be a better leader myself. It's kind of a weird way to think about it, but I coached others because when they experienced issues and challenges, I always inevitably went back to my desk and said, do I have those issues and challenges? Like, it was a really accelerated thing. So if Chris had an issue, then maybe I had one. If Brian had an issue, then maybe I had one. And what I found is, I guess every company has this problem, but small growing companies have it it seems to be magnified. And that no matter what we do, we have limits in time, money, labor, and that you have to be very careful with how you allocate it. Mm-hmm. And that maybe we all don't do that so well. And the other thing is that in entrepreneurial businesses, I think sometimes misunderstand an entrepreneurial business. Like, they think an entrepreneurial business is better if there's no rules and that we're mavericks. And I don't think that's how you scale a business. You may run from corporate America because you don't want to be told what to do, but you need to have a system for just about anything that you do. So OKRs is an allocation system of like what needs to get done. So, it brings up the topic of strategy and what's important around that. And yes, I do have this habit of reading a book and then deciding how to make it better. And the concept of OKRs came from Intel, the chip company. They have their own little jingle, and they had one of their founders was right.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yes, that's the one. I couldn't do it. You could. And they put this in place, and there's just these legends of how they used OKRs to defeat the enemy, to launch a new chip at the critical time that really helped Intel have many good years. And a young employee was there by the name of John Doerr. And John Doerr actually in Silicon Valley went on to be a very remembered investor, advisor. And he was brought into Google when they were in their third year and less than 30 employees. Mm. And he did this presentation, and he was like on the Google board. And what's kind of famous about it is that Google adopted this. And if you think that I read a book and then turn into something special, well, they, I mean, how big are they? They're so big, I can't even tell you how big they are, but they still use this OKR process. And, if you look around, there's a lot of other great success stories with it. But what I think is interesting about the whole thing is if you do it really well, it's designed to help you get more done. It's designed to help you set stretch goals, maybe get things done more quickly. And what's really unique about it is, we started this with limitations in time, money, resources, all those allocations. This sort of starts with, you got to be clear on where you want to go. And so I've had to get really clear about where we want to go and then set goals around it and then share them with someone like with you, Brian, and other leaders. And it's sort of this cascading process, which naturally bothered me, by the way, because, I'm non-hierarchical. This is top down. But I think from this perspective and how it organizes resources, I'm not sure it's a bad thing.
Yeah. So is it more of a company strategy thing that the leaders of an organization kind of participate in, or do they apply across the entire organization?
Well, I completely get the questions that stem from that. I think everybody in the organization participates. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of a process. If I establish an objective that, I want to go to 7 baseball games and you work with me, then maybe your goal is to support how we'll get to 7 baseball games. Like then you set a priority around that. Like maybe you'll provide transportation or buy the tickets. So it's a silly way to think about it, but you're setting a lot of times what are pretty aspirational goals or stretch goals. What I like about them, and I think whether you started at a place where they use MBOs, management by objectives, or we all probably went to some seminar where they did like the SMART acronym, where they said, Brian, now set your goal, make sure it's specific, measurable, attainable, results-based, and time framed, right? Yeah. Well, that's all sounds good, but in the end, you could still set a really crummy goal where you don't have the resources to do it, and it might not be tied to that. You could set a SMART objective, but it might not be the right one in some ways. So, one of the cool ones that I think maybe might be worth sharing is Google did one where their objective was to get to 1 billion hours of YouTube watched video. So imagine a whole division then saying, well, I can get videos to load, a second faster, and I could come up with something that you show on the video that would help people see the next video. And just imagine how everybody contributed to it. And actually, it took them like 4 years to achieve that objective. Mm-hmm. But they said they felt it was an important one, and they just kept going. And in the end, they made incredible progress. So they made very little, and then they kept working it. So it's kind of neat how that kind of thing can, be very relevant. But what I like about it is, Placer sets a goal that we're going to employ 1,000 Delawareans. And then you say, all right, well, let me look at my area. I can contribute. I'm going to help with 250 Delawareans getting jobs. And another leader says, I'm going to help with 50. And then you say, guys, look at my team. How are you guys going to help us get 250 people to work? That's really how it works. Mm-hmm. What I think is interesting, that's the objective. The key result part is how you're going to measure it. Right. And that's the hard part. And I think in the spirit of that, if anybody called me or emailed me, I'd tell you that's the part we're still in year 3 here. We're still working at getting better at it. But you have a couple of different measures of your objective. What you want to be careful of is sometimes I see people do a measure that doesn't stretch it very much. So they might say, I'm going to do this one thing perfectly, when really maybe their key result needed to be that they needed to do that perfect thing 1,000 times. Right. And that's a hard thing. And sometimes people ask, like, what's different about this than KPIs? I think it's a common thing. I mean, a KPI is a measurement of a job. It's a measurement of an outcome. This is about goal setting and how you measure whether you achieve in a goal. So also heard these called PKRs. And I did a talk for a state government agency that called them PKRs. And that's what started my interest in this topic.
Cool. And what's PKR stand for?
So they chose to use priority as opposed to objective. So, you know, that's a good catch. I should have shared that. But so, you know, it's a journey. The books measure what matters for those that are interested. You know, I don't know. I know that you're a lifelong learner yourself. You know, I don't know what other questions do you have about it that you think would be interesting to you or the audience?
So when individuals in a company are setting up their OKRs, do they all have to tie into a company goal, or could they be individual, or how do they typically work?
It's another common and difficult question. You know, it requires discussion, and that seems to be the hard part. Like, you got to lift your head and say, if I work for you, hey, Brian, what are we trying to get done? You know, right. And I have to know what I'm best at. So back to my example, if you said, well, we're going to put 250 people to work, that's one of our objectives, I might have to say, well, I'm in sales, so I'm gonna get 5 new customers. My objective is to land 5 new customers. Do you think that would help you put those 250 people to work, Brian, if I got us 5 new customers? Or would you like 8? Do you want 3 or 8?
Yeah. So they got to be agreed upon.
It comes that kind of discussion. And then if you were my boss, you'd say to me, well, that's really great that you want 5 customers, but what are we going to measure that guarantees that happens? It's got to be more than just get. So maybe it's get new customers. We'll get 5. Well, how are you going to do that? You're going to do that through networking. You're going to do that through channel partners. Are you going to pick up the phone and make cold calls? Are you going to write thought leadership? Those become your key results, that, you know, the way in which you think you're going to get that objective done. And it's an art. It is definitely one that you have to go through. And I'm sure this isn't even easy to listen to, frankly. The key is you got to practice.
Yeah. So, you know, why are they so important now? Has the pandemic or the remote workforce, has that changed your viewpoints on the importance of OKRs in any way?
Well, one thing that's kind of cool about it is I think organizations are learning to try and solve really big problems or to do really big things. So one thing, you and I have a really big goal. We want to be the largest employer in the state of Delaware by 2028. Truth be told, that would be one heck of an aspirational objective. It would be amazing. And then we'd have to come with four or 5 measures with how we're going to do it. Ironically, I use that as an example. I've been using that internally a little bit, Brian, because what you really end up doing is then breaking that down into quarters and years to get to that goal, which is kind of what we're doing. But we're kind of in this system. So we're a flexible company. We're hybrid. I'm remote, and I'm proud to let anybody else be remote that wants to, that feels comfortable. But I think it's really relevant now because organizations are adopting these new work models, and people are not in everybody's line of sight today. You know, I'm not sitting in an office with 30 or 300, people. My way of keeping track of outcomes and performance and production might have been by walking around, leadership by walking around, time in the chair. And I'm surprised at the number of organizations that don't track things in this area, but maybe it's different than that. They don't trust what they track. In other words, there's sort of this still inspect and verify kind of thing. So I think the OKR process, and then this is the ultimate for me. Now I'm really preaching, and maybe that's okay. I believe employees today want to do great work. And doing great work is not me saying, Brian, I want you to start at 8 and clock in at 5, and damn it, do what I tell you to do all day. No, I'm not sure that that's very exciting and aspirational. But maybe what's possible if I said, hey, we want to try and do these amazing things. What role could you play with your skills and with your capabilities? And, what are you best at that could contribute? And then we'll find a way to measure it together collaboratively. It's harder, it's more complex. But I think we're moving towards a world where we need to let people create more value than they're paid. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that's where people find their muse, their flow, get really excited about things. So that's what I think is cool about this. If done right, this is much more than just counting activities. This is about getting teammates to engage on how they can contribute towards goals that they're excited about.
Yeah.
Team goals. And that's a different perspective, isn't it?
It is. It is. And I think just in talking to people, you hear people say over and over again, well, I don't want to be micromanaged. I don't want my boss telling me I have to do this, 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 and this. And then at the same time, they're saying, well, how do I know if I'm doing a good job? How do I feel like at the end of the day, I took a step towards whatever my goals might be? How are we measuring success? I feel like I come to work every day and I do a good job. But if I don't have any real insight into what my colleagues, my bosses, whatever, think is a good job, then I have no way of truly measuring it. So I think that's a big part of it.
I think the world's going so fast, Brian, that, we do this on a quarterly basis, 13-week cycle. We're getting better at that. A lot of times mid-cycle, killing an idea, that objective's not relevant anymore, putting a new one in. I mean, this is about honesty and trust too. But we've got plenty of objectives that are going to take longer than 13 weeks. But you don't know till you get into it, but you just got to be okay with that. And, it is tough. This isn't for everybody, because as you know, and you've experienced as we've done a rollout, some people want to be told what to do. Mm-hmm. And luckily we don't have many, but they want to be told what to do because they're not quite sure what to say or how to participate in this. So our trust is we got to keep doing this, because people then eventually can say, here's what I'm good at. I understand our goal. Here's how I can contribute. It's a participative process that we've got to teach them how to do this. And then they teach us stuff too along the way, right? I mean, I don't know marketing, but I say, hey, I'd like to grow readership to our Problems We Solve series by 10x. We go talk to our marketing person and say, what role can you play to help us grow this 10x? And they say, well, I could do these things. Great. Make it an objective. Now, how are we going to measure it? That's kind of how it happens.
Yeah. I wonder, Chris, if people fear this a little bit. You talked about how we do them on a quarterly basis. I wonder if people think, geez, is this going to be used as a weapon against me? Like, am I going to get to the end of the quarter and my boss is going to say, well, you set 3 objectives and you didn't achieve any of them. What's up? Do you see any of that?
Yes, I absolutely do. Because goal setting, although tied to performance management, shouldn't be used in that way. I also think that you have to, as a leader, read below. You've got to dig in and ask questions in that circumstance, because a lot of times, I find that a lot of times when we don't achieve an objective, we actually achieved a lot of things we didn't put on paper.
Right.
But unless I ask about them, and say, well, what did go well? And why did this get hung up? And I know you do it too. What you realize is our poor teams, what they have to do is get better at the planning on the front end. they want to build the Eiffel Tower in 13 weeks, right? And they wonder at week 6, if they didn't really stop and think what it takes to build the Eiffel Tower, they're like, I'm never going to make it now. Well, no kidding. What would be required? And sometimes our projects are that complicated, and we almost get more apologetic as it gets later in the quarter. And I've tried to really tell people that let's focus more on, leadership sometimes is us asking the right question, but I'm coming to understand that it's the process of planning, Brian. Do you have the right resources to do that? Have you talked to the departments you need to help you? Has it been allocated? Is there new skills that we don't have around here that we need to be able to get that done? Because as you know, sometimes ours are very aspirational. We don't know how to achieve them.
Yep.
And maybe
sorry, I was going to say, I even find sometimes I set them or work with my people in setting them, and then part of the way through, if we're not achieving them, I take that more personally sometimes than they do, because I look at myself and say, did I set the right objective to start with? Did I set them up to achieve that objective and give them the tools that they need and the support that they need? So not hitting the objectives is really a two-way street, I think.
And I believe you're correct. The answer and how you describe that's great, because it's a very personal thing. Think at it from a project plan perspective and just who needs to do what when. I think we don't achieve these OKRs, and I have plenty of them that on my team, same thing. But most of it is about the planning right now on whether or not they're set up for success. They need to spend more time planning than they do. Less time doing, more time planning to make sure they know what it takes to achieve it. Because a lot of time our time frame just gets screwed up. But I would say this, I'll summarize some thinking in this regard. There are just success story of success story, the people that have achieved amazing things. Measure What Matters talks about organizations, not-for-profits that have used this, famous rock stars that use this stuff. And it does take time. We're in year 2 of implementation. And I would say, we're just above average, but I am committed and believe that the only way we're going to get extraordinary productivity from a very unique company and culture is to make sure we leverage a process like this, because it's a system of goal setting that ties to your strategy, and it's a part of your ability to get stuff done. It's how you execute. So, and in organizations that struggle, they probably don't have a system for this stuff.
Are we better at it today than we were 2 years ago?
Oh, we are so much better. We are better at it than we were 6 months ago, 2 years ago. Technology is catching up to be able to help it. We used to do it on spreadsheets and paper, and it's evolving. The system, the world's going faster. So, I'll compare it to this. The other option is you set goals with your employees on January 1, and next January 1, you review how they did. Well, how many times does that work? You win a big client, you lose a big client, you get new assignments, you don't get new assignments, the whole world changes. And, that review process, nobody likes that. It's too much. It's the same thing like when you budget. Big public company that does a budget for 2022 in September of 2021. How do they know what the heck's going to happen December of 2022? Welcome to the world of virtual and dogs. That's Ziggy the Aussie announcing his awareness.
I see. What are Ziggy's goals for this quarter?
Well, I tell you, his objective is to be loud, and one of his key results is 5 barks per podcast. He's one behind right now, but I think he's going to make up.
I could drag it out if I need to.
Oh, probably not a good idea, brother.
No. So you obviously know a lot about this. You've made it a key part of what we do here at Placers. How could somebody reach you if they wanted to ask you some questions or some advice on it?
That's cool. So it's chris@myplacers.com. My cell 302-547-7426. I've helped lots of companies kind of get started with it, but really your management team's got to be committed to the implementation, and that's not easy. Hey, Zig's right on plan. That was his fifth part. So,
and didn't Wayne Gretzky once say that you fail to achieve every goal that you don't set?
Yes.
Something like that. Wayne Gretzky was a hockey player, for those of you who don't know hockey or are too young to remember.
Yes. So I think I can tell you this, that bad goal setting wastes more organizational resources than any other part of a business. That I do know.
Understood. Well, thanks, Chris. This has been fun, and I will hand the microphone back to you.
Thank you very much. We've got two Aussies in the background letting themselves be heard. It's always nice. I'm joined, Brian and Saleo and I do this each week. So if you have any other thoughts on things you'd like to hear us do some research on, share best practices, we're happy to do so. Talk to you soon.
Good. Thanks, Chris.